All right. So our objectives for this session, I will model for you how to open and use many of the features in Jamboard. I will also share some examples of Jamboard uses for productive group work as an eco-groovy alternative to butcher paper and sticky notes for student collaboration. And in breakout groups, you'll have the opportunity to browse a diverse sample of templates that Brianna Gann and I have put together and discuss with each other best practices to increase rigor of student discourse as well as group management while using Jamboard. So these are our working agreements. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking to the group to reduce background noise or any potential feedback. And if questions arise, please feel free to unmute your mic. I do not have my Chromebook on my left-hand side, so I'm not reading the chat or seeing you right now, and I don't mind being interrupted. I'll also try to pause often to ask for questions, and I wonder if anyone would like to unmute now to volunteer to be a chat room monitor.
I'll monitor the chat if no one else would prefer to do it.
Thank you so much, because I'm presenting blind. I need to hear someone.
Yes.
Wonderful. What's your name?
It's on the screen as Catherine Pratt, but I go by my middle name, which is Kelly.
All right. Thank you, Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're going to start out with looking at two different ways to access Jamboard and how you can edit that access so that your participants can use it along with you. So here we are in this meet, and this is one of the ways that you can open a jam. So you can see it's called Whiteboard Open a Jam. And if I were to click on that, start a new whiteboard, let's say I'm collaborating with other adults, I would not advise doing this with students. But if you were in a meeting collaborating with your PLC or with any other adults, this is one way that you could open a jam and start. You could set the background. You could, maybe you have a couple groups of adults that you're working with, and each of those groups is going to use a different background. So you can see there are some cool backgrounds. There's graph paper in dark and light. There's black and blue, plain white. You could have a photo as a busy background, lined paper, or just a blank screen. So that's one way to open a jam. I never do that. I've never used Jamboard that way. I always go into the waffle when I'm trying to create a new jam while working with students or teachers. And you can see within my Google Waffle, in the second tier down of apps, is the Jamboard, also known as Whiteboard or Jam, logo. So this is typically how I open jams, and I would recommend that you open a new jam or Jamboard this way. In the lower right-hand corner of my screen, you can see a plus sign, and that's how I can start a new untitled jam. On my screen previous to pushing that plus button, you could see other jams that I have used in the past. So I'm going to model for you some of the features. We can title our jam. So here we are in Jamboard for collaboration. And I'll be modeling how to not spell things correctly as much as possible. When I'm in a jam, I might choose to start off class, let's say with an image. So I'm going to go to the image icon. You can see over on, I'm sorry, I'm going to do something first. I'm going to share this with the people who I might want to use this with. This was the first thing I wanted to show you. If you don't share editing access with people, so let's say I'm using this with my PLC, Antonio, Bobby Cannon, and let's say Yoazama, we're going to collaborate. I must give the participants editing access. So with your students, you'll need to give them editing access per period. Otherwise, they won't be able to use this. They won't be able to type or do anything except view it. So very importantly, doing that. I'm going to make a Jamboard, let's say, to start off a class. And I want to start maybe my first day of school talking about the Olympics and connecting with my students that way. So you could search for a picture. Perhaps you're going to start off a class with a phenomena. So a picture of a phenomena, a picture of something interesting that people might collaborate on. And this, again, could be used as a bell ringer activity. So the next thing I think I'll do is insert a prompt. I'm going to go to the text box and start typing in a prompt. Which is your favorite sport to watch in the Olympics? And then after I've typed that in, the moment I start to resize it, I can change it to a subtitle, or I can just drag on the corner to change its size. I've already stopped being able to edit. So if I decided, oh, that doesn't sound quite right, I need to go back in with these 3 dots in order to edit. And maybe I want to be modeling complete sentences or something. So during the Olympics. All right, and now perhaps I want that to all fit on one line. So you can see I can resize it. I can change the color just with a click. And then sometimes your prompt is sitting there not looking bold enough, possibly. And so an option that we have is to put in a shape. I'd like to put a box possibly around that. And I'll turn that box blue. I don't think I'll fill it, but I'll just have the outline blue. And then I can use those 3 dots to send that outline to the back so that my audience or my participants, my students can read that. And then if you wanted to change the prompt or edit it, you'll have to move the box out of the way. Otherwise, you won't be able to get into those 3 dots to edit. So I have this slide perhaps done. I think I'll make the background a little bit more fun. And I'm planning on doing this with groups of 4 students. So I'm going to put a sticky note, maybe a blue one. And I'm going to say, this is for group 1. And rather than spending my time creating, possibly I have 7 groups, so 7 frames that look exactly alike, I can go up to the top here and I can duplicate my work for each of my productive groups in my class. I'm going to, let's say I only have 4 groups, just to make this a little shorter. And you can see I've clicked on frame 2. So now when I click down in here, I am on frame 2. And I can start to edit. Oh, this will be for group 2. So I can very quickly make a template. In fact, this could be for all of my periods. And then I'll make a copy of this for period 1, period 2, period 3. And I'll keep my template just in case. Here I am on group 3's frame. In case a student does something by mistake, I'm sure, and you lose the integrity of your period 3 template, and all of the students are counting on you to provide maybe that prompt or that image that are now gone. So if you have a template and you've saved many copies, you can go in and get that template and send it back out to your students. Something that is new, this is a repeat presentation. I presented this in January. In the past, we were not able to delete frames just 6 months ago. So if you had, let's say, students, because they have edit access, and they're clicking through and they accidentally create, whoops, 4 extra frames, yikes. Now there is a possibility of going up to the 3 dots, as well as duplicating, you can delete a frame. So that's good to know. And one other use I want to show you before we head into breakout rooms and other things is how I would create a T-chart, because I often use that Jamboard for discussions and breakouts, and I want a T-chart, or I want maybe 4 different boxes for Freyer model. And so you can do this type of thing. I think that the rectangle breaks up the screen pretty well visually, and it'd be up to you if you really want that header bar. And then you can go in and add headings. So maybe I'm going to have students compare and contrast swimming in the Olympics versus track and field. Possibly they're going to come up with all of the examples of events within those two sports. Wonder if any of you watched the opening ceremonies this morning. So I'll give you a link for some fancier lettering, but again, you can change the size, you can change the color, you can do a lot of different things with those letters. And there is a cursor, I'm sorry, there's the pointer. Here's a pen or paintbrush or highlighter. You can do some things with this as well with your mouse. And if you have a stylus, that's much, much easier. And I can erase as well. So when using this with students, I would recommend modeling some of these tools that are off to the left. Maybe without content, have them work with the tools and collaborate and do something where they're getting to know each other and having fun and practicing that. So that's a little bit on access to Jamboard, and it would be the same for teachers and students through the Google Waffle or through Google Meet. Sure, I showed you one last thing, the T-chart. Yes, so Jamboard can be used for collaboration, for in-person collaboration, where every student has their Chromebook, or with adults, and really in any subject area. So you can see some examples here on the screen in math or chemistry, physics, lots of science classes. Groups of students could be using Jamboard to solve problems, mathematical equations. Pairs of students could be exploring phenomena, sequencing events. You could have your students taking notes for a jigsaw using Jamboard, or looking at difficult vocabulary using a Frayer model. And this could be in groups of any number of students, although I have groups of 4 up on this slide. You might use Jamboard while students are editing their work. They could take a screenshot of, let's say, a paragraph, and then use the tools within Jamboard to edit one another's work. And I really like T-charts in comparison as well. If you've been teaching for a few years, you may have used sticky butcher paper or sticky note poster paper for group work in the past. And I feel that Jamboard really solves 2 problems or issues that I've had in the past with using butcher paper. And those are that Jamboard files are easy to store. Not only you have a copy, but all of your students have a copy, and you can retrieve them easily. I would roll them up and they would get shoved in a drawer or a cupboard, and it would be maybe hard to find a couple of years later. So arguably also Jamboard is a more sustainable use of natural resources than paper and sticky notes. So here are a couple of examples where you can see students in a chemistry class are using 3 different colors. This might be a group of 3. One student's using red, one black, and one blue to show equity of voice, to show their teacher their contributions. Here is a phenomena. So maybe in social studies or science or any class, you could start off with a group of 4 or any number of students. You can see, what do you wonder, what do you notice as a prompt in the middle of the screen. And then also sticky notes could have a little bit more direction in these 2 upper corners. And again, each student in that group could be using a unique color of sticky note, pink, blue, or green, for their contributions. And you might alternatively have them write their initials on their sticky note for accountability and equity of voice. Here's an example for maybe a pair or an individual student to sequence. And this is completed, but originally the yellow would be maybe on one side of this frame and the blue on the other side. And here's another example where students might be working on a Frayer model for vocabulary. The vocabulary term is in the center, air pollution. And so we're going to head out into breakout room with about 4 other people, and you'll have 8 to 10 minutes in this breakout room. Here on slide 12 is a link to open up this example. So you can see there are 20 frames. This one was created by Brianna Gann a couple years ago. So please do open that example and click through the 20 frames while you're in your breakout. And you can start out talking. You can introduce yourselves. So your name, your site, and share how many miles away or the relative distance you were born from the site where you work. So for example, I was born in Boulder, Colorado, and I work at Ed Services in a portable at Everett Alvarez. So that's a few, maybe 100,000 miles away. I might be the facilitator for my group. The person born closest to where they work today would be the reporter. So when we come out of our breakout room, any highlights that your group talks about, you can report out to the whole group. And so while we're looking at this folder of many examples of JAM uses, your prompts are best ways to increase critical thinking using Jamboard and academic language practice, dialogue routines. So before I send you out into these breakout groups, I'm going to check out the chat. What do you think, Kelly? Have I missed anything? I'm going to send you into your breakouts. YouTube. The sign-in sheet, Barbara, before I send you out into your breakout, is on slide 2. So there are the slides. You also need the slides open so that you can access the sign-in, the evaluation, and these Jamboard that we're using for this breakout.
Robin, I'm sorry to answer your question earlier, and I forgot I was muted. When you asked about were there any other questions, Mr. Narvaez answered my question somewhat, but I had posed a question: is there a quick way to add all students from a class to the Jamboard? I know I can add a link, for example, to my classroom, and students can access the link there, but you had said that I needed to give everybody editing access. So how do you do that quickly with a whole class?
Yeah, so what I would do, and get out of here, I would be sitting quietly in my classroom, right, or my house or wherever I am the day before or sometime, and I would create, for example, this template. And I would go and save this template to a place where I can find it, right? And I would make a copy. So this is my original. I didn't really show this, did I? Template. So here I have whatever I want to call this activity for all 5 of my periods. Perhaps I teach 2 periods of, I don't know, performing arts. And so I'm making them a template, but I'm planning on, you know, I share it, I save it wherever I want to save it. And then now that I have my template, it's safe in case that anything happens to that period 1 version. I'm going to make a copy for each of my periods. So I have my template, and then I have my, maybe I'll put it at the end here, Jamboard for Collaboration, period 1. And I'll save it to an appropriate place, right? Wherever I know I'm going to find it. And then I make a copy for period 2 and period 3, and so on and so forth. And so when I share it with my students, where do I share it? Share. Then I copy the link and I put it on their HyperDoc, or I put it in my Google Classroom. Does that answer that question?
No.
Okay, ask it again.
I understand how to share the links with the students. I'm talking about, you mentioned they have to have editing.
Okay. So I go into my, sorry, I didn't tell you this part. So here I am, and I make one for period 1, period 1. And perhaps I have a list of all of my students right to the left of me on some screen, and I start typing in their names, right? So I put in the first 3 letters of their name, and their name comes up, and I click. And that is the fastest way I know to put in edit access for every individual person within period 1. I would do it way before class starts, and then the link would be there when class starts in their HyperDoc or in their Google Classroom.
Okay, so maybe to save time, if I know I'm going to use this a lot, I make a document that has all my period 1, 2, 3 kids, and then I can just copy and paste it into this.
You could do that.
Okay. Thanks.
That's a great time saver. Thank you for that question. All right, I'm going to send you out now. And just a reminder, we are talking about...
I have another question. Why do you like Jamboard better than, say, Padlets?
Okay. So Padlet is nice, let's say, for students to go in if you were doing a gallery walk and students have already posted something that they've done. Maybe they have a slide deck and they're going to do a gallery walk of each other's work. But if they're solving problems, if they are doing some of these things, I don't think Padlet works. Does Padlet work for sequencing and matching or for grouping? Like, here's something cool. I can't do it on that one. I'm going to put in a whole bunch of sticky notes. We'll pretend that there are lots of students who are participating here, and they're using different colors. And so they've said different things. I'm just going to put 3 sticky notes on the screen for sake of time. All right, so you have a bunch of students working together, and maybe you say you have 3 minutes to respond to the prompt. Let's say there's a question up here. And so in each of these sticky notes, a different student has responded to the prompts. Or let's say perhaps it's a picture, and you say, what are your questions about this picture? What questions or what things do you wonder about this phenomena? So you have all of these sticky notes from your group of 4. Maybe they've brainstormed, so they have many of them, and now they can start to cluster them. You bring them back, you send them into their group. Oh, these are maybe in a different category. And then they can start to say, okay, out of all of these questions, say there's a cluster of 4 instead of just 2, which one is the best? Or can we combine these questions about this phenomena to write an overall group question? And we'll put that overall group question here at the bottom. So I think Jamboard is collaborative in the moment, whereas Padlet could be collaborative asynchronously or on another day. That's my initial answer. Does anyone else want to chime in why they like Jamboard or Padlet better? Different uses?
I just want to say that Jamboard allows you to collaborate at the same time as the product is being created, as opposed to the tablet, because the tablet is just the product when you publish it, and students can make comments. So this is Jamboard allows you to actually interact and participate while the product is being created.
Yes, it's live. And you know, one thing that I think is cool about Jamboard, and I forgot to say at the very beginning, Jamboard was created by Google engineers for their own collaboration many years ago, before they pushed it out and started letting us beta use it during the pandemic, or very recently I've started using it. They used it for collaboration internally to develop all of their other apps. I'm going to show you one more thing, I think, before I send you out. Using a shape tool, I'll use a different frame. Let's say you have a prompt up at the top. I'm just going to put in some gibberish. And you're having students talk about a prompt. Perhaps there's an image. And before they even start, you want to ensure some equity of voice. So you decide you're going to give each student only 2 chances to speak. And so you can put some talking chips and make those different color. So perhaps there's one student who's assigned red, one student is assigned blue, one student is yellow, and so another student perhaps is green. And you could set those talking chips, maybe they're a little smaller, off to the side, somewhere at the top, and say, students, you have so many chances to talk. In this case, I'm giving you 2 chances to talk. And each time you share, bring your talking chip down and put it next to your idea. So if the student uses a sticky note or stylus, whatever they're using, they can have their talking chip next to their contribution. And then if this red student, say, has already spoken twice, then they need to wait for the yellow, blue, or green student to make a contribution before they move on. There's a little something else. All right, so I'm going to try to head out to a breakout room for you and remind you that you're looking at 20 frames and thinking about critical thinking and academic practices, academic language production as you're looking through those 20 frames. What just happened? All right, I'm going to try again. Scott, I'll put you in a group. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, I'm not sure what is happening. This usually works out. Anyone have a suggestion? The rooms are set. And go. I don't know what to do. If you can see your room, please go ahead and join it. If you don't have a room, I'm going to put you in one. So for those of you who aren't in a breakout, I'll work on getting you there.
I can't hear Robin. Is anybody else? Yeah, we can't hear you.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, now we can.
Okay, I don't know when I went on mute, but what I meant to say is hopefully you had a good discussion of these 20 examples, and as you clicked through them, hopefully you were able to discuss these two prompts, best ways to increase critical thinking with many of these different uses, or which of these uses lends themselves to academic language practice. So I was just asking if any reporters would like to share out some highlights from your group's discussion.
I can share. We were in group 2, and we looked at slide 12, and we agreed that slide 12 lends itself for critical thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Cause and effect, and any kind of map, thought map or graphic organizer could be copied and pasted on a Jam frame. So you could use that as a template and then have people putting text boxes in on top of to contribute, or writing with their stylus, or using sticky notes. Thank you. Were there any other highlights from that group too?
We also mentioned about slide, I think it was slide 18, or the Venn diagram, I think. The Venn diagram can also be for vocabulary, academic language.
Yes.
And critical thinking as well.
Thank you. What about other groups? What were some other highlights?
I don't know which group I was in, Robin, but my group talked about slide number 5. And I think it was mentioned that we can use that slide to explain and describe. Which one do you prefer, dogs and cats? And that's pretty much as far as we got. We didn't have enough time to go through all the slides.
Yeah, and when you're looking at something like this, thank you for sharing. This is something very not academic. Possibly it doesn't fit any of our classes, but it would be such a great way for students to start establishing a sense of belonging in our schools after a lot of time away, and get to know each other. And also, you might use something like this if you're teaching students for the first time how to use Jamboard. And maybe you teach math and you plan on using Jamboard more for solving equations in the future. Maybe a way to up the critical thinking, if you were solving equations, would be to encourage students to show 2 different ways of solving an equation, or put in prompts that are higher level thinking, of course, Costa's levels of questions, where they're predicting or they're analyzing. Are there any other groups that would like to share out ways that Jamboard uses can lend themselves to academic language practice or increase critical thinking for our students?
I want to share some ideas. Jamboard can be used to brainstorm ideas on a topic. So it gets students thinking about how to organize themselves, what things to include, and so forth. We can also use them with prompts in order for students to come up with different ideas, and each student can use a color to show their contributions. And my belief is that all of these ideas lead to academic language.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. While he was talking, I was thinking about students in any class starting to organize images. Maybe you put a bunch of images off to the right-hand side of a frame like this, and you have them sort. And while they're talking and while they're kind of helping each other maybe to understand the topic better, it could be a pre-writing activity before they start writing their own ideas down. They discuss and they can gather some ideas from their peers. Maybe someone had a background experience that can help another student. All right, so I'm going to give you a little window. The window to share out highlights from your group's discussion is slowly closing. And we're going to move on to a totally different breakout. I'm going to try to scramble you so you have different people to talk about, and you can introduce yourself to your new group. In this breakout, we'll be here for about 10 minutes. You can talk about your name, site, and whether or not you're wearing some cool shoes, like maybe some Zoris or chanclas would be cool shoes, some sandals, or if anyone's in their hiking boots, maybe some waterproof hiking boots would be some warm shoes. Here we're going to be looking through a different set of Jamboard examples. We have a math example, social studies, PE, science, English, and art, and then maybe some other things to think about. I don't know why. And mainly, we're thinking about how to make sure that all of the students are heard, that they all feel like they belong to that group, their dignity is upheld. So equity of voice, there's lots of things to do. I showed you talking chips, but maybe there are other ideas. And also, I think to help our students engage more in whatever they're learning, giving them opportunities for voice and choice using Jamboard. And these are some examples. So I'm going to scramble your groups, shuffle, and send you out. You have 8 minutes.
So Robin, we're not using a Jamboard as the group right now, right? We're just examining the one that we're seeing.
They muted me. Did anyone have a question? I'm going to join all the groups then and see if there's a question. Welcome back. As you're coming back into the room, we're going to debrief your breakout and hear from people who are not wearing shoes or who have very little shoe material on their feet. Would anyone like to unmute and share highlights from your group's discussion? I have a couple of ideas to share with you, but I wonder, since we didn't get to hear all of the group discussions, if there was anything that was really, I don't know, new to your mind or very interesting to you, any highlights that you'd like to share. I'll give you a little bit more time to unmute.
As per managing group roles for equity, we came up with colors, numbers, assigning roles as well, and as per increasing voice and choice, Jamboard has various options, not only writing, but also drawing. So some students don't like to speak, so they can draw, or they can just write their ideas.
Thank you. That's a great idea. I didn't talk much about group roles. In science labs, we often have, the materials person, all sorts of things beyond a facilitator and a reporter. There might be a timekeeper. And so maybe in your class, you're already using group roles. When you're on a jam, you might want to, like if it were this one, possibly somehow define them. You could use a text box or a sticky note somewhere on the screen, or have the students do it to say who is doing which role, who has which role, or what the roles are. You could define the roles for them if it's something new. Any other ideas from other groups about voice and choice being increased using Jamboard or equity of voice?
Our group really liked what you had modeled with the talking chips for the equity of voice. And then we also talked about, as far as choice, different ways to answer certain questions, offering, for example, if you were doing vocabulary, you could have a picture or a sentence using the word, or a definition, and give choice for how it was presented.
Thank you. Some of the other ones I was thinking of are, instead of the teacher putting a picture in the center, you could have the students go out and search for an image that fits a certain topic or learning goal. Maybe they have to describe it to someone verbally before writing it down. Students might be choosing, instead of the image, they might be choosing the text to annotate. I don't know that I have that up on any of these, but we may have seen some text. So instead of the teacher choosing the text to do something with, maybe with a highlighter tool or sticky notes to annotate, having the student choose. And then of course, when you have a phenomena, maybe it's solar panels or something like that. If this was the one phenomena, having the students ask their own questions for further investigation. I think we all know after this past year that increasing student voice and choice is a great way to help students feel more engaged in what they're learning. All right, so with just a moment left, I wanted to share, there's a link at the bottom of this slide to cool text where students and teachers can type in anything and use some of these cool fonts to spice up your jams. And then there is a session evaluation link at the on the last slide here. So please fill out this evaluation and be sure that you have signed in. I'm going to stick around in case anyone has any questions. Thank you all. So Ms. Cardenas, I'm going to send out an email that will have the slides and all of the things, including the recording. So you'll all have all of that as soon as I do, in like 5 minutes.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Can students record themselves on a jam? If students can, teachers can. I don't see any audio, but I know that the Google people want to keep being in, in power. And so they keep coming up with things that will help make all of their applications better. So tell them you want an audio feature. I'll tell them for you and write a note down so that students and teachers can leave audio notes for each other. If enough of us say it, they will do it. But I don't see any audio feature right now.
That might just be another way for increasing voice, right?
That's right. Yeah. Servando is saying they're able to type, draw, and speak, but maybe he meant speak to each other in person rather than recording their voice. Hi. Thanks again. Have a wonderful year, everyone. I'm going to keep hanging out.
Thank you very much.
I'll be here if you have any questions.
All right.
Hi, Sarada.
Hi, I'm sorry I had to step out I had to go and drop my husband. He was leaving for India. So I couldn't join the breakout
breakout.
room.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to let you know. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
I'm going to send you a recording. So
Yeah, that'll be
anything you
great.
missed,
Yeah,
check it
that'll
out.
be great. Yeah. And so that I can go back and view what I had missed so that I can go back and practice. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Robin. This was amazing. I'm definitely going to be using it. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
Have a great year.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Robin. I really enjoyed seeing all the different examples you provided for the different content areas. So I'm definitely looking forward to that email that you're going to send us that has all that so I can reference it throughout the year. Appreciate
Yes,
that.
and please feel free to share it with your PLC or any colleagues. Have a good year, Ms. Cardenas.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Maria Acevedo, were you a student in our district?